here with the Hugs Bison guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Phil and Sean. So I guess, first of all, bit of background on this is that today is your first album official launch.
It is indeed, yes. We're currently playing out the album online, and then at £3.30 at 3:30 we will be
is that what we're charging for it?
All it's we'll be playing live. I've gone wrong already, Phil. We're doing a live set about 3:30 today.
Well, I mean, I was actually, because we're recording this kind of live and we're streaming it out live, so could probably want to talk to you about money and how you're putting this album together and how you're releasing it, because that's kind of interesting to me. That's the bit that I think is going to be of interest to lots of other people as well, about how you're actually doing this. But if we can sort of start by sort of going back and talking about who you are and how this started, and to get a bit of background.
Hugs Bison, I run some experimental music nights called Open Circuit, and Phil started DJing at them between bands. And we just got talking about iPads and tablet technology, smart technology, and we were just chatting. Wouldn't it be interesting to see if we could use them as instruments, play live, react to each other? So we just got together and we really enjoyed it. Then we said, wouldn't it be great if there was an app that you could run one app through another app, maybe go through another one. And by the time we had our next rehearsal, Audio Bus came out, which is exactly that, and suddenly we were away, I think. And so we've just been enjoying it. Now we've played live a bit. We don't have any really set rules other than it's very much based on two iPads. Not quite what style it is or anything like that.
Well, it sort of started out very experimental, didn't it? I think because when we began, it was really just to play around with what was possible. We didn't have like an objective. We didn't have a style that we wanted to emulate. We didn't really have a genre that we were going to try and fall into or anything. I think from those first sessions, we sort of just stumbled across a sound, which we thought, that sounds interesting. And from that, we've kind of danced around that kind of sound, experimented in sorts of lots of different areas, found what works for us, what doesn't. And it's really grown from there, hasn't it? I think it all comes from kind of the experimentation and the improvisation. And that's the one... If we had a rule, I guess that's the one thing that we stick to, is that we don't want to do stuff that's rehearsed. We don't want to do stuff that's kind of repetitious. It's all kind of spur of the moment, whatever mood we're in, whatever environment we're in, whatever we feel like. And we just try and capture that wherever possible.
I mean, I kind of had a thought the other day. I mean, because obviously, if you're listening to this, you can't see, but you don't really have a lot of equipment. I mean, I'm looking at the desk. There's a MacBook, an iPad, and a mixing desk, really. And
the MacBook's kind of superfluous to us actually playing. I mean, the MacBook's only there because we're having to stream stuff out online. If we were playing a gig, or if we were doing a rehearsal session or a recording session, it would literally just be two iPads. Sean's got a phone that he uses for some peripheral stuff as well. Occasionally there'll be other stuff bought in, like I think you've got a wind-up radio and stuff.
Wind-up radio, monitrons.
Yeah.
It's kind of mostly stuff you can play off grid as well. That hasn't really... Sorry, I'm just looking at the cat.
Oh God, no! Hold on. Yeah, looking the cat. The cat's underneath the camera. If the camera goes wonky, it's the cat.
So yeah, Millie's a big influence on the band.
Yeah, Tim.
Anything to contribute?
Band mascot. Oi! Get away from the camera.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
lordy.
Newish addition to this house. I've quite got used to having a studio.
Yeah.
It just yet. What was I saying? Yeah, off-grid. We have talked about stuff. We want to do some off-grid gigs and stuff, but we haven't really. It's sort of there.
Don't you hold on? Yeah, the cat's mid-interview. The cat wants to jump on the camera to investigate. Come on. Oh my goodness. I mean, because I don't know whether you agree with it, but it's quite low tech, but it's in so much as it's kind of sort of low tech, high tech. You've got obviously lots of high tech gadgets making the music, but there's not a lot of it. I mean, it's I kind of find that quite interesting in the way that you're making music, and to me, it kind of, again, it's kind of come back to the almost like punk ethic, because anyone can do it. Everybody has a tablet and an iPad. It's very sort of accessible. Obviously, you kind of spend a lot of time refining that and making it work, but in theory, is that you don't need a lot of specialist equipment. It's something that is sort of quite open source.
I wouldn't say open source as such, but Android is way behind for various technical reasons. Phil might be able to tell you what those are, but I've just started messing about with Android tablets. That they're real everyman ones, because you can get a half decent 7-inch tablet for about £90 now, and I found some alright stuff. But iPads, once you've got your iPad or your iPhone, it is you can get going really cheaply. Sort of, I was very lucky. My first 2 iPads were given to me, but
I mean, I'm sort of, I suppose, coming from the angle of that, you don't need expensive studio time, because recording studios cost, thousands and thousands of pounds. You don't need, producers to come in and mix this down. Obviously, you're gonna have to buy some equipment, but comparative costs.
Well, if you look at it for an album, say the cost of the album including equipment, if you're a traditional band, you'd be paying, so we've got maybe £1,000 worth of iPads as our setup, but that's a couple
we wouldn't need those are kind of, you could get away with cheaper models, you could get away with less equipment, but we kind of choose to have stuff that, because we're pushing it a little bit at the moment. We found recently with our kind of current versions of our iPads that they are reaching their limits of what we can chuck at them, which is
but I mean that's
you would spend that to make a decent album. You spend that in studio time, so it's like say it swings and roundabouts, and it's a professional sounding album. It's all recorded straight up to 2-track, so there's the only editing is sort of topping and tailing and mixing between live sessions. There's no mixing as such.
I think that's one of the things that people find difficult to grasp with what we do, because it's kind of, you look at our setup and at the bare minimum it is a mixing desk and 2 iPads. We've got other little bits and pieces, but that's essentially what it was, what it is. People tend to find it difficult to grasp the fact that pretty much every single sound that is made from scratch and is improvised on the spot. One of the comments that we kind of get after gigs sometimes is, where did you get those samples from? Where did you get those orchestra sounds from? Well, we didn't. They're just instruments that we're playing. We're creating loops, we're putting them through effects, we're doing all sorts of glitchy stuff, creating drones, and it makes quite a rich sound, and we just record that all straight out. The whole lot mixed together. So both of our channels, both of our tablets going into the mixing desk and then just taking a feed of that. So there's very, very little that happens in kind of post-production.
As a thing, you're not recording artists and then putting them in as samples and playing loops back.
No, it's not premeditated, basically.
No, we might have, because I've been started with computers, now onto iPads. I've been working with lots of traditional instruments, so as I work with them, I do build up a sample bank. But you might bring a double bass in, but we tend to not plan it. We've not got some drum pads that'll fit with that. It's very much.
So I mean, there may be samples, but because I suppose. I mean, as an example, we went to see Orbital that was a while ago, but you're still there with kind of banks of keyboards and samplers and drum pads and effects, and you don't sort of have that for performance. You don't have this kind of van load of gear. It's two guys and an iPad. I suppose it is a very, very modern way of working because you can do it.
I think it's kind of you can get quite minimal. A lot of electronic musicians do have very little equipment. So Orbital, as an example, years ago would have had like loads of heavy duty sampler units and stuff and mixing desks and things. I imagine that the majority of the stuff that they play now comes off of laptops, and off of hard drives. And I think one of the temptations with a lot of electronic acts nowadays is how much of that do you kind of pre-prepare as kind of sequences that you can just trigger. I often wonder at gigs like that how much work is actually going on stage.
Are they just phoning it in?
Email checking is going on. And we're trying to very much avoid going down that route. We want everything to feel, and I think it creates a very organic feel to the sound that we make, because it's sounds that we're kind of creating on the fly and then mutating. And it's very difficult to do the same thing twice when you do that. And that's kind of deliberate, and I like that.
So, moving on, because the other point of being here today is that you are doing a live stream of the album. So that's kind of as a live release. Because you are obviously creating the music is one thing, but then releasing it into the wild, obviously you have no record label and no one sort of working sort of for you, but at the same time, do you need a record label? Do you need a manager? Do you need someone doing that? I mean, with the internet now, is it possible to sort of work on the scale that you are without any of that other sort of machinery to help you along?
The actual doing it, I think, is you can do it all yourself. It's the promotion side of things.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a bit of money to pay a PR firm, because they get you into magazines better, and not so much management. Definitely not so much. We're on iTunes. We're on Google Play. We're on Spotify. We're selling the album through Bandcamp. It's the first. I've been making albums for a long. Well, I played my first band in 1987, so I'm old school. But this is the first hard copy album I've done for a good while. I've just been doing stuff online, but we just thought we've both got a little bit of spare cash at the moment. It'd be nice to just have something nice, because we're very proud of this album. So we thought we'd go. And it's social media is the way forward. It's the big thing. When I've been talking to people in London, they're surprised, because I do a lot of free improv as well, and I'm known for that. How I actually find out about stuff being in Cumbria, and they just don't get that. It's a very level playing field now. Doesn't matter, as long as you've got a connection, you can be talking to anyone in the world.
And that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, because that's the thing that I love, and I think is incredibly admirable. And to prove a point in that, because we're 300 miles from London, what is kind of regarded as the centre, but you can still reach everybody, and that's distance is immaterial because you have connectivity, and it's almost a question of does it really matter? Have we sort of actually gone past that stage where some of the old ideas are now becoming redundant because you really can do it yourself, but properly?
Up to a point. The thing that still falls down is... So I was at a meeting in London a couple of months ago, and everybody had been seeing each other at the South Bank and the Barbican, etc. So you miss that networking side of things in that way, where you just bump into people, have a couple of beers, do some deals. So it's 80% there maybe, but it would be good to... our first gig was in London, so Londoners know us. Jerry Dammers nearly came to see us. We still haven't forgiven him, just because it was a bit warm.
It was a warm summer night. It was the Indian summer, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Indian summer evening, and nobody wanted to come out.
The one time in England it's warm.
Yeah.
You pray for rain, everybody.
Currently, we're playing the album out. We've got Birmingham, Newcastle... Sort of,
yeah, I mean this is a case in point really. The connectivity thing I think is really kind of moving along. It's great. I mean I'm sat here right now while we're playing the album out online. So this is giving people their first chance to have a proper listen, and I'm able to actually sit here and chat to people who are listening to it at the same time. Now 15 10 years ago, however many years ago, that would have been inconceivable. I mean, that's really powerful, particularly when you've got people... our stuff isn't particularly mainstream. We kind of admit that. It's kind of quite niche stuff. But the people who do connect with it and who want to come to our gigs or listen to our music, generally...
Sorry, Sean's being eaten by the cat. Maybe if you're watching this on the camera... Sorry if there's any screams of pain, it's... Stop eating the band.
Just to get my place in this band.
I've lost my train of thought now, Millie. Never mind. I was probably talking nonsense anyway.
I think I think we're sort of halfway around this point of, for want of a better word, the digital revolution, because it is fantastic. It's certainly the stuff that I've been waiting for, because we now have the ability, to sit on the computer and talk to the world at what is for us a reasonable price, and we don't have to spend certainly this is it coming from my end. It's knocking zeros off the end.
Yeah.
It's still expensive, but I think 10 years ago, for every 10 years we go forward, we actually take a zero off the price.
Oh, definitely. First, when I got into electronics through rave culture, ambient dance, the orb and stuff like that, going probably back to acid house. First sample I bought, Akai CD 3000 XL, grand. You could play up to 16 samples.
Wow.
But the extra memory, which took it up to megabytes of memory. You could, one sample could be up to maybe 20 seconds long.
Did you find though that having those restrictions made you creative with the way that you used it?
Up to a point, but it's when I moved on to computers that I suddenly, because it was all MIDI programming. Ooh, I'm actually bleeding.
Oh my God!
It's not only rock and roll that has blood, sweat, and tears.
No, we bleed for it.
You really do bleed for your art.
That's really quite serious.
It's all right. I'll heal very quickly. She just doesn't want this interview to go well.
No.
Yeah, I didn't really get on with MIDI at all. It just felt quite natural to me. But when I could throw in field recordings onto a laptop and start moving about, so the first software I really used was Acid Pro, which is now a Sony product, but I still use that in workshops and stuff. But that was great because you could speed up, slow down, loops, but it didn't have to be sort of play it onto a keyboard. You could actually just layer it up, and that's when I started what we're at this point of live soundscaping. Then Ableton Live came along, completely threw the game open even more. So you could actually build a set from nothing, live sampling, but not in that sort of. There's nothing worse than you go and see a live performer who's got the foot pedal loopers, and you have to sit for 5 minutes while they build the loops up. I once saw a band that did that, then it went wrong near the end, so they started building loops up again. So I did a very loud cough. So that was part of it, but I don't see the point of why don't they just have a backing track if you're going to play the same thing every time. It's at first it's got, oh, that's interesting, but once you've seen them, you don't need to see the 5 minutes of them building. So I think it's the improvisation that's at the heart of what we do that's the important thing. And I think technology-wise, iPads are great because you've got that screen disappears. With laptops, you've got a barrier between you and the audience, and the tactile, especially if you use a phone as well with the accelerometer.
Yeah.
You're touching it like
it's more tactile. It feels more to me. I love working on an iPad because it feels tactile. It feels like an instrument in its own right. It's like you say, you can use the accelerometer to change the sounds, so it's not just touch, it's actually how you move in the device, which we don't tend to use that much at the moment, but there's areas for more experimentation there. But
and there's stuff coming out with using the camera, like a theremin.
Yeah, so you don't even need to touch the device anymore to make sounds, which feels quite weird, that technology's gone that far. And I'm sure there'll be much cooler stuff that's going to happen as well as time goes by.
Yeah, because I suppose this is still at the experimental stage, isn't it? You're still kind of trying to change and move things around, and that's sort of quite exciting because you're not really limited. Like, again, I'm looking at a guitar in the corner. There are only so many chord structures you can do. You can kind of go to much more different and interesting places.
Yeah, and I think you can even use traditional instruments as well and kind of take them in different directions. So there's no reason why we couldn't take samples of that guitar right now, record a loop of it, or just record some notes off of it or something, and then take that sound in a completely different direction to the point where it doesn't even sound like a guitar anymore. But I think it's the accidental nature of a lot of the stuff that we do that kind of really interests me. It's kind of, you'll take a sound which might start out to be quite traditional, and it might sound like a traditional instrument, and by the time you've chucked it through like 3 effects and put it into a sample and then started manipulating the pitch and started manipulating the way that the direction that you're playing it in, put it in reverse or whatever, you end up with some sort of sound that you could never have kind of scientifically put together. It's just you've accidentally arrived at it and you think, oh, that sounds great. And I really love that. I love it when we're improvising stuff and then we get to a point where we kind of both look at each other and go, that sounds great. And we don't know how we've got there. But then, having said that, we're always kind of at that point where we become content and quite happy with a sound. That for us is the point at which we think, right, now we need to move this on and take it somewhere else. otherwise you just find yourself noodling for 10 minutes with the same thing that might sound pretty for 30 seconds or 45 seconds, but will become very boring very quickly.
Actually, that's something that you mentioned to me before about, not noodling, about finding something that's good but then progressing it, and that seemed to be, to me, it's quite an important rule, because I've heard, a lot of kind of very noodly electronic music.
Yeah, it's a tough balance, and being able to recognise, especially when you're playing live in front of an audience, of what's interesting, what actually becomes hypnotic, or what becomes boring. Because you get the other thing where everything's changing too much, and a lot of people that start playing electronics live tend to do that, of thinking it's boring instead of sitting on it for so it's very much juggling, sort of, to just get it right. And I think having the extra person, I can remember doing a solo gig years ago, and I had it sort of sketched out what I was going to do, and I'd done it all in 5 minutes. Then I sort of had to improvise, so that's when I stopped sketching stuff out.
Is that, just sort of have that working relationship where you can say to each other, I really think we need to do something with that bit there, it's not really going anywhere, or how about this, and throwing
musically. We very rarely talk to each other when we're playing.
Really, that's quite interesting. So you can kind of hear.
Well, yeah, I've got a sound. It feels going, and I can either go under him or over him. But if I start going over his, if you're listening, that's me going, Phil.
Yeah, tugging and pulling.
Sort of
sort it out.
Yeah. So we have that conversation, but it's
that's
the iPads rather than us actually going.
Right. That's interesting, isn't it?
That's what improvisers do. I'm very lucky finding Phil, because I've been struggling finding a good improviser in this area to play with, and I've found one outside of the pool of musicians that I know. Because it's not so much playing, being a good improviser, it's about listening and reacting, and there's a lot of really good musicians that don't do that.
But that's funny that to obviously not use that as an insult, but you're not a musician.
No,
because Sean, you played in bands for years. You've played, lots of instruments. You are, you are what I would call a trained musician. But Phil, you come from obviously a completely different background, working with tech and computers. So it's understanding how technology works. So it's it's when a technologist meets a musician, almost.
Yeah, and I think that's our current sort of strap line on our website and our promotional stuff, is that Sean is a musician with an interest in technology, and I'm a technologist with an interest in music, and somewhere in the middle we kind of meet, and it kind of works. And I think that's good, because I think in all life it's good to have different disciplines and have different your approach to life should be different. You should have different political views. You should have different. Everybody's different. What was that classic sort of I'm a Celebrity, get me out of it, wasn't it? There was that famous rant by some comedian lady whose name completely escapes me. She was saying, if we're all the same, it'd be boring. Everybody's got their own quirks, and that's good.
I'm sure that was something not on I'm a Celebrity.
Not that I watched that.
I've never even heard of it.
Right. No, but it's
But it puts us in good stead, I think. I think having those different approaches to things, having those different disciplines, works well for improvising, because we probably come at things in slightly different ways. I feel like because I'm not a traditional musician, I don't kind of have a background in having played, I've dabbled over the years, but I've never really played on stage or done any kind of live gigs or anything, or recorded stuff apart from the occasional little bits and pieces. And I feel like I'm not constrained by sticking to the rules of what music should be. It's like chord progressions and things. I don't care. I'll just play what I think sounds good, and hopefully that fits in with whatever Sean's playing.
Totally.
Do you agree?
Totally. Yeah. I think that's why I now felt really lucky finding Phil, because I'd been, to put it in a musical sort of setting. For years I was told that this is right, this is wrong. Because you're talking, the sort of Western classical scales and sort of the 12-note octave, where so you're talking working in half tones, but even just in Indian classical music, you're working in quarter tones. But what happens if you just get rid of all that and say it's all right? And I've been doing that, but getting quite a bit of stick off certain musicians, because I work a lot with field recordings, and I'm not. What's the point of recording a beautiful bird song if you're going to auto-tune it? It's just to be right. So we've got a very natural. It's what pleases us, and we do seem to.
And I think there's a certain amount. Sorry,
yeah, and I think there's a big chunk in the middle of that we do have similar ideas, but then the other half of our ideas are quite different, which takes it off into other directions.
And it's those extremes that makes really interesting stuff. So we'll chuck things at an improvisation that might, on paper, might sound completely bonkers, but somehow work. It's like you'll be in the middle of doing some sort of very glitchy electronic section, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a trumpet will come in, or some violins, or a ukulele, or something that just it feels like it should be completely ridiculous and shouldn't work, but you play with it and it just kind of does somewhere. And I think if you didn't have the balls to kind of just have a go at that and see, well, what happens if you put those two sounds together? What happens if you take some, EDM type beats and put some sort of Hungarian folk instrument over the top? What will that sound like? And that's where the most interesting stuff comes out of what we do.
Brilliant. So we've covered the past, and we are currently here at the present, almost officially launching yourselves into the world. You did a series of small gigs last year, but here we are in 2014. What does the future now hold for you? More touring, more recording, more releasing? Do you have any kind of hopes, ambitions?
That silence is very telling, isn't it?
I think we're in a lucky position of making all right money at what we do professionally. We fill with these sort of various technology-based things. Myself with music, and I've been using iPads a lot in schools lately and stuff. So we've got a good, solid background to be able to just not treat this as a hobby, but just only do things we want to do.
Yeah, we don't put any pressure on it, do we? And that's kind of worked well in that we kind of tend to do things with Hugs Bison in a very considered way. So we'll organise a recording session kind of a month or a few weeks or whatever in advance, and if what we record sounds pretty decent, then we'll make a plan for the next month or so to think, well, what are we going to do with that? Can we get some sort of release out of it? Which is where the first 3 EPs came from. We did a couple of sessions, and then we kind of assessed things after that and say, do we think we've got enough material here just to see how this stuff sounds as recordings? And it worked. And we kind of gauged what people's reaction to that was, and played a few gigs, and then the album's kind of gestated for a few months as well. So we actually recorded it, I think it was October last year. And then we spent a good few weeks just listening to it and just trying to get a feel for how everything should slot together. And then probably spent a good month, putting that together. But there was never... at every stage there was no pressure to think, we need to get this out before Christmas, or we need to set a date where we're going to do stuff. Things just kind of naturally fall into place as and when they do.
And I suppose the thing about that though is that because you don't have any pressure, you're only going to put stuff out there that you're going to be really, really happy with. And so surely you're going to be giving it a better, what you feel is going to be a better quality release to the people you want to hear it.
Oh, totally, yeah. I think if we're very good at identifying if stuff's not so good. Sort of, you just it can be hard sometimes. It's why it's good, sort of, because I've done a lot of solo stuff, to work with somebody else, especially if you're like-minded. To actually, some people think everything they do is brilliant. Some people think everything they do is rubbish, and you've got to be a bit more. Is it subjective or objective? I never remember.
Objective.
You've got to be objective and look at yourself and go, "That's good. That bit. That's really good." But then it gets a bit rubbish there, and you're still working for yourself, and you come up with. We're both very, very proud of the album. But there's lots of people who might not like it. It's at least 4 because we're losing listeners.
It's probably coming up to tea time.
The sun is out every time.
The sun comes out.
Of course, if you want to get to the park.
It seems ironic, a lot of the promotional stuff that we've done for the album has been very dark and very subdued, and I think it's because we've kind of recorded it over the autumn and winter. It's become a very dark album, but it seems like every single time we actually try to do anything, the sun comes out.
We're sucking the badness in for you.
But I guess in answer to what are our plans for the future, I guess the short answer is we don't really currently have any, and we quite like it that way.
We've got a live set we've recorded for a radio station.
Yeah.
Electronic music, the numbers
Future
broadcast.
music.
Future music. So we'll be getting that off to them. And that'll be played out at some point soon.
And I guess we hope that we'll be organising some more gigs in the first half of this year, because we like gigging, we like playing live.
We do.
Going back to that, do you think people sort of stand there watching you play live and go, "Hold on, this isn't a gig"? Do you think these sort of people get a bit surprised?
It's better than laptops. For years, the amount of people that just walk up and start talking to you if you're playing a laptop live, quite what they think you're doing, I don't know. But at least because you look like you're doing something instead of just sat behind a screen, it's a bit better. But I think musically we've gone down really well. Not had huge audiences at the gigs we've played, but
they've been appreciative.
Yeah, whereas most gigs you do, quite often you go, that was good. Everyone, all the other bands tell all the other bands, that was good. That. So yeah, we must work against it. But there's been 1 or 2 people at each gig that have just really, really got it. Sort of, and bought stuff and kept in touch with us.
And I think it's that quality. It's quality over quantity with the stuff that we do. We're not looking, we don't expect a massive fan base. We don't expect to sort of ever break into the mainstream. It's just not what we're doing. It's not that sort of music. So I think when you do get those individuals or, a few people at gigs who feel the urge to come up at the bar afterwards and, tell you how they really did enjoy what you're doing and ask questions as well about what it is that we're doing, even if it's just one person at a gig, that gives me an immense amount of satisfaction. It makes me feel really good that people are getting it. And those who don't get it, politely clap, which is fine.
Yeah. I
think we don't really tend to play the sorts of venues where people are expecting anything else. We play a lot of places which are into experimental or exploratory music. They go into those gigs because they want to hear something that's off the wall or is experimental or is kind of at the extremes of a genre. So
I think it summed up with the last gig we played in Liverpool for the ATP people at Mellow Mellow. We headlined by Zeus, who were a two-piece sludge metal band.
They were brutal. They were a Spanish sludge metal band. Amazing.
And then there was a guy just playing sort of like Bontempi organ type
who was also amazing.
Us then a three-piece that was sort of aardvark, who were quite full in your face experimental noise band. And we're getting to the point where a group of people can actually enjoy all of those
yeah, because you did a gig at, was it Liverpool Cathedral? Was it actually in the cathedral? Or was it actually just?
No. We went to a gig.
Sorry, sorry. I know I'm getting confused. But it also, because you have this kind of quite big resonance and resonating sound. I think I can almost imagine you in sort of big echoey chambers, or like you say, in strange locations. I can sort of hear it in the middle of a forest.
Yeah.
And I can almost sort of maybe actually not sort of for me not see you in clubs, but in music in
wild spaces.
Spaces you wouldn't expect, maybe.
That would be lovely, yeah. And especially now that the law, as far as licensing of live events, is much more interesting.
Technical changes.
No, it's all right. It's just we're coming up to the end of the album.
Right. Yes. Well, we're gonna have. We'll wrap this up quickly.
So licensing. If we were battery operated, I suppose you could count us as acoustic. But if it's under an audience of 200, you can play a lot more places now. So I think we just started looking at a few places. Started thinking about. We're looking at a bothy on the middle of a fell. We'd like to do. I'm just in negotiations with them. Things like that. I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I played it in 18th century watermill a while ago. I'd quite like to get us there. Actually in the mill itself. So yeah, keep a lookout because it's going to be interesting.
Keep watching the skies.
Yeah, keep watching the skies. Indeed. Something's going to land on your head.
Well, because it's 21st century music. I think this is to me it's I'd call it digital punk, lo-fi electro, ambient soundcore, experimental electronica. I really think it's interesting what it's two guys with iPads, but making such a big kind of noise and really pushing it out to a global audience via digital medium. I think it's very interesting with what you're doing. And I think there's going to be a lot of I think there's going to be a growing audience. I think there's going to be more people watching, but probably more people watching in places again that you maybe wouldn't expect, because I think it's kind of like punk. People will watch it and go, "Yeah, I can do that. I've got an iPad. Maybe I can do something like that." Anyway, thank you for your time, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Thank you.